Humanity is infected with a virus that is unknown by most. This is an infection that is so subtle that it pervades the entire world in consciousness itself. Now, what is this spiritual disease? This is what is known as Maya in Sanskrit. Now, there are a lot of misunderstandings about what Maya is. A lot of people think Maya just simply means illusion. But what we are talking about here is really the illusion of measurement and in relation to duality itself. This is actually what Maya means. And technically, when we translate Maya, like I said, it means the illusion of measurement. Basically, the illusion of measurement according to your own subjective view of the world. So when you look out into the world and you look through these rose-colored glasses, through your conditioning, through the socialization process that you've endured, and then that's how you see the world. You think that the lens that you are looking through is the world. This is Maya. This is the infection that pervades the entire world and most people in the world. And it is normally only sages who don't suffer from this affliction. And so basically the whole world is infected with Maya. And in relation to that, like I said, what we are talking really about is duality. So we're basing all of our assumptions of the world from this place, right? We're basing it all on the dualistic mind. There's this or that. We're basing everything on a duality rather than having a holistic view of the world and seeing it from a non-dual place. We just believe in the objects that we see and we don't understand that there's an underlying substratum to all. And so we assume that the surface is the reality. So we basically judge a book by its cover, but that's really not what the book is, right? We are looking out at the objects, we are judging the world based on the five senses, and we're judging it based on the conditioning that we've endured, and we think that that's what the world is, and that is not what the world actually is. And so it's this duality of Maya that is the infection in the world. Actually, in one of the greatest texts you'll ever read, the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka, with commentary from the great Advaita masters Gaudapada and Shankara, there are two verses that I'll briefly read to you actually about the duality of Maya in the world and how that relates to the mind. So in the Mandukya Upanishad it states that as in dream, the mind acts through Maya, presenting the appearance of duality, so also in the waking state the mind acts through Maya, presenting the appearance of duality. There is no doubt that the mind which is in fact non-dual appears as dual in dream. In like manner, undoubtedly, that which is non-dual appears as dual in the waking state also. And so this can appear as a few confusing verses from the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka. But what you need to understand first is that ultimately our true nature is Atman, right? Is the undifferentiated consciousness, which is identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality, that ultimate substratum that is ever present. It's right here. It is immanent within reality and also transcends reality. And so what basically the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka is stating is that we are ignorant of our nature as Atman, as Brahman, because we take our projections of reality to be reality itself. So we think that the world is dual. We think that dualistic conditioning we've had, which has enhanced the dualistic mind, is actually the world. But what these two verses were alluding to is the idea of the rope and snake analogy that we find in the great tradition of Advaita Vedanta. And so what that basically means is that in the analogy, what we see is a rope, right? So all that there is a rope, but we mistaken it for a snake, And so we act accordingly. We may act out of fear, we may run away, and so forth and so on. And so we are not seeing the world aright, right? So we just see a snake when there's only a rope. And so that's what we're really talking about here, right? There's a classic phrase in Sanskrit, which is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Now that basically means that Brahman alone is real. The universe is an appearance, right? The dualistic world is an appearance on the cover of the non-dual Brahman. And so what we do then is we forget Brahman. We forget that Brahman alone is real, and we think that the rope is a snake. But what that verse is stating that I mentioned to you guys is that all is Brahman and everything else is an appearance on that. It arises in the consciousness of Brahman, right? And likewise with us on an individual level, the appearances arise in the field of our consciousness. But the problem is due to our conditioning and the socialization process we've endured, we identify with what comes into the field of our own consciousness. And so this is what builds the ignorance of Brahman. You'll find this all throughout the great Vedic literature, the ignorance of Brahman. In Sanskrit, it means avidya. And in contrast to that, there is vidya, which means knowledge. And that means the knowledge of Brahman, right? So someone who knows Brahman, someone who abides in the fundamental understanding that Atman is Brahman. But avidya is the ignorance of Brahman. It is someone who is swimming in Maya, someone who is infected with this dualistic disease that plagues the world, right? The reasons why we can go to war, the reasons why we can cause crime, that we can cause conflict around the world is because we believe in this illusion of duality, which is the heart of Maya. It's an infection. It is basically a virus that people carry within themselves because they haven't heard the higher knowledge. Or even worse, they've forgotten. And sometimes some people willingly forget because they succumb to the dualistic mind. Now that's a worst case scenario, let me tell you that. But nevertheless, the ignorance of Brahman is something that we all need to overcome if we are true spiritual aspirants on the path, right? We have to understand that Brahman alone is real, rather than succumb to our projections and succumb to our conditioning and succumb to our emotions and succumb to anything that is within the field of that dualistic mind, right? Anything that was within the field of that dualistic mind keeps you a hostage in Maya, and you are constantly ignorant of Brahman and can't see that Brahman alone is real. And so the illusion of Maya is basically analogous to the water in which the fish live, right? So a fish is not cognizant of the water in which it lives. That is its world, right? The water is its world. And so that is what Maya is to humanity. Humanity live in the illusion of Maya. That is what the so-called representation of water is to us as a representation of the fish. And so people are swimming in it and are not cognizant of what is going on around them, that they even are within that sense of dualism. And so they can't step back and actually see the true oneness of reality. So that's basically what all of us are kind of brought into this world, is this water of Maya, right? This illusion that is around us, but we are not cognizant of it. And everyone is a victim of it, right? We come into this existence, our parents are under the illusion of Maya. We go to school, the teachers are under the illusion of Maya. You go into working life, your colleagues are under the illusion of Maya. Everyone is under the illusion and spell and are infected with this disease of Maya. It pervades the entire world. And it is only a rare few who become aware of this and seek to find the real truth of existence. And so someone becomes a real, true, sincere aspirant and seeker. And so those who find it and become a spiritual aspirant yearn for the truth. Now, obviously, it would be an ideal world if majority of people did that, but that's unfortunately not what the world is, right? We are swimming in Maya, and it's only a rare few of us who peek our head above the water and see the totality of our existence. And so what we need to really realize is that from this state, which a lot of us don't analyze and don't contemplate, is that the individual itself is limited because of its own subjectivity. The subjective world we've built for ourselves eclipses the true reality of Brahman. And so the individual itself is limited because you're operating from a limited space. You are not aligned with the infinite consciousness of Brahman, the undifferentiated consciousness of Brahman, right? The jiva in Sanskrit, the ego persona system, is a limited vessel, a subjective vessel that is differentiated. It's not undifferentiated. So it is essentially limited. And if you operate from that, it's such a tiny aperture to look out through the world. And when you look out into the world, its lens is completely dirty with conditioning, emotions, just subjectivity in general. And you think that that's how the world is, and that's not how the world truly is. And so that builds the ignorance of Brahman, right? And so you're looking out into the world through this lens, and you think that that's what the world actually is, and that is not what the world actually is. And so when you realize that the individual is fundamentally limited, what should we do about this? And it reminds me of an idea that Jiddu Krishnamurti once came up with, which was the idea of holarchic thinking, which means basically to see the world holistically and not from the limited vessel of the individual. So you have a sense of holism. You've come back to this sense of holism because you are in the process of unraveling yourself from this disease and infection of Maya. You've taken somewhat the medicine of Brahman, which is curing your perception of the world, and you can start to see the world in its truest sense. And once you have that sense of unity, this is what starts to build the actual real knowing that oneness is the true reality. You start to really have a sense that Brahman alone is real and everything else is Maya, is an illusion, and is somewhat a virus that has infected the hearts of humanity, and that is why we can treat each other the way that we do. And so this is why this holarchic thinking is necessary. And so we need to retract our awareness from being entangled within this dualistic landscape that we've kind of built for ourselves also within our own mind, but also disentangle it from the external world, right? And then start to work on the dualistic mind so you can open that space of consciousness where everything is pure oneness, pure stillness, and is ultimately Brahman. And that is the ultimate medicine for each and every one of us. But you have to be aware and cognizant of this virus that pervades all of humanity. And you will be once you realize that fundamentally and truthfully, that from the statement Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, that truly Brahman alone is real and you are that. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.